Thank you so much for joining me on Let's Talk Money, a show that decodes big business headlines for a common man's savings and wallet. And I'm kicking off a brand new season with none other than the former Finance Minister and External Affairs Minister, Mr. Yashwant Sinha. My quest today is very simple: to decode the forthcoming union budget for you. Mr. Sinha, thank you very much for joining me.
Welcome.
I think when we talk about budget for a common person or even a salaried person, the big thing which comes up is taxes. And I think the common crib is that very few people are paying taxes. We are one of them, especially the salaried class. And can anything be done about it? What do you think?
You know, the UPA government came out with a new direct access code bill.
Yes. And you were the chairperson.
I was the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Finance in those days, in the last Lok Sabha. So the bill was referred to the Standing Committee by the Speaker, and we applied our mind to it and gave recommendations which were widely welcomed. I mean, this was one committee report which the media took notice of and said that we have made some very good suggestions. Now, one of the suggestions was, for instance, that the exemption limit as far as personal income tax is concerned, which is of great interest, as you said, to the salaried people, that should be raised. We had recommended 3 lakhs per annum. That's a question which the government will have to decide. But the more important suggestion that we made there was that after having fixed the threshold, it should get linked to the cost of living index.
Absolutely.
And just as the government employees get their dearness allowance increased annually based on the cost of living index, similarly this threshold exemption limit should go on increasing automatically every year.
Right.
So then nobody will crib. And nobody is going to say that, prices have gone up and my income remains the same and I'm paying more tax on it. That.
So what do you think should that limit be today? If we had to start off as a base, so it's 2.5
We'll
lakhs.
have to do some calculations.
Some calculations. But
We'll
the demand is 5 lakhs?
Could be 5 lakhs, because our report is about 3-4 years old.
Right.
And in the meanwhile, the cost of living index has gone up. So whatever it is, that should be the benchmark, and then it should be automatically linked to the cost of living index. Unfortunately, the finance minister didn't think it fit to go for the direct access code bill. And I think in one of the very first budget that he presented, he said that we have taken on board most of the recommendations.
So it's not required now anymore.
So it is not required. Though recently I wrote a piece in which I said that many of the recommendations, for instance, including on GAR, General Anti-Avoidance Rules, have not been incorporated. And once we get the direct access code bill passed by Parliament, then it will become a kind of new income tax legislation,
right,
which should hold good for the next 40-50 years, like the last one.
Absolutely, and also ensure that tax avoidance by large overseas corporates does not happen. All right, so let me come back to this population which pays taxes, right? Mr. Sinha, all governments, including when you were the finance minister, have been attempting to widen the tax base, right? It's somehow just not happening. It has gone up, a little bit over the last decade, but just the number of people who are out of the tax net is humongous. How do you fix that?
There are various ways in which this could be done. You will remember that when Chidambaram was the finance minister the first time, he had come out with a formula which was called 2/4. I raised it to 2/6 or something. And then, we made various provisions with regard to cash transactions. And we said it should be based on PAN, or cash transactions should not take place at all. But you are right, the number of taxpayers in India, income taxpayers, is woefully small.
3.3% of India
the
pays
total
taxes.
population.
Yes.
and the prosperity that the country has achieved post-reforms has not at all got reflected in the number of taxpayers. When I was the finance minister, my target was to take it to 5 crore, you know. But then I left, and I don't know how seriously this was followed up, and this 2x4 or 2x6 also has been given up. The point is, how do we locate the people who should be paying tax, one, and two, what should be the tax? Presumptive tax, for instance, is one concept which has been talked about, tried from time to time, hasn't worked very well. So we'll have to devise systems whereby we are able to bring this tax avoiding population within the tax net. And I think
do you think the current government is focusing enough on it? Because, you know,
they have recently come out with some restrictions on cash transactions, and that's the best way to tackle it.
Okay. So baby steps, sure and steady, and
yeah,
hopefully
a whole lot
it
of baby steps,
will happen.
And you will not have 3 crore going to 5 crore in 1 year, but you maybe have, you might add 30 lakhs, 40 lakhs, 50,000, you know, like that.
Numbers like that. But you know, surprisingly, you had a surcharge on the super rich. Now, this is another thing which is beginning to bother everyone, which is the inequality, the income divide inequity, which is happening globally and in India as well. The rich are getting richer and the poor poorer. And we can see it happening in our country as well. So you had a surcharge for people earning above 1 crore. And the numbers turned out to be as dismal as around 50,000 people in the country earning just about 1 crore. So how do you, there has to be a better way to grab people who are earning over 1 crore because they're spending. So why are we not being able to do that?
No, that's why, you know, the other thing that we thought about was that we should have just one code number for a taxpayer, whether he is an income taxpayer or he is a service taxpayer or he is an excise duty payer. Whatever it is, state sales tax, wherever he is paying tax, he'll have to quote a number which will be common. And we can trace the transactions that he is carrying out. For instance, if he is paying, let's say, a certain amount on excise, you know, or service tax, and he is not paying income tax, we can easily net him within the income tax,
right?
By finding this out.
Okay.
So we had recommended that there should be one number which should apply to all taxpayers in India. And you know, the point is that if you have GST, for instance.
Yes, I was coming to that.
Yeah,
will that help?
That will help.
Absolutely.
That will help because you will have one common tax called the goods and services tax, and you will not have a separate sales tax and a separate services tax and a separate excise duty, and you will have income tax, direct taxes plus the goods and services taxes. So people in this country will be paying only two kind of taxes, and then it will become much simpler
and
to compare one with the other, and then confront them with the facts.
All right, fair enough. Let me come now to GST per se. One, GST will automatically bring in a lot of unregistered small businesses within the ambit of the tax net. Most people, when they look at goods and services tax and they know it's a crucial reform, don't really understand how is it going to affect their daily home budgets. Can you throw some light on it? Will it make things more expensive initially? Will there be a little period of adjustment if it's allowed to be introduced and then go through?
No, the secret to understand GST is to remember, one, that it's a destination-based tax, it's a consumption tax rather than a production tax. Right. Having said that, I'd also like to emphasize that there is no tax on tax as far as GST calculations are concerned. So what is going to happen is that automatically under this formula, prices will get reduced because today's prices are fixed on tax on tax. If that goes, then automatically the prices
will moderate.
That is point number one. point number 2 is that it will be a very clear taxation policy, easy to understand, and therefore the burden of tax will get reduced because the cost of collecting tax will get reduced. Third point, which is very important, is that it's a consumption tax. Now, people who consume more will end up paying more. It's not a production tax where whether I pay or I buy or I don't buy. Things are different. So, it's a simple tax, it's a straightforward kind of a tax, and it is for the good of the taxpayer. It is for the good of the consumer. And that is why this country, like most other countries in this world, should have the goods and services tax.